What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast. Today we have a very special guest. He is an amazing doctor, health and wellness professional, the author of the bestseller, The Unspoken and Clean is Lean. He also has his app called Dr. Ian's World. Please help us welcome the one and only Dr. Ian Smith. How's it going, brother?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on the show. Glad to be here.
No, thank you for coming on. We really appreciate you making the time for it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. It's going to be great talking to you.
Yeah. Listen, we're in an age right now where we're all doing things we never thought we could do. And one thing COVID, I think, has taught a lot of us is that not only are we resilient, but we're also more creative than we thought we were. And who could have imagined 10, 12 months ago that we would communicate like this and be fine with it, and be okay that sometimes we have technical, snafus. We're just rolling with it. And this is what life should be. Life should be about rolling with the punches.
Mm-hmm. Love that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've talked about on the podcast before, all of the best experiences and all of the most important growth that both of us have had in our lives has come from facing adversity, having to kind of pivot a little bit, make decisions on the fly, and then live with, whatever positive outcomes and consequences there may be. And so far, so good for us, I think.
Right.
We get to sit here and talk to you today, so can't be too bad.
I think it's one of those things, like you have to go at life, not always being on a strict program, like plan. I think the best success comes when you take those imperfect actions to just get things going. And then once you get things going and you're in motion, then you can start putting in the structure and creating a plan for yourself just because you got yourself moving. And I think that, kind of one of these, kind of you were like saying, like, I think COVID definitely has allowed a lot of people to, at the same time, understanding there's been a lot of, sadness and, there's been a lot of hardship. I think there's also been a lot of people who have been able to benefit that took advantage early on and have been able to realize what they're capable of, test their character, come to the other side and say, I can do this. I can do this. And you know what? I'm going to do this.
Yeah. It's interesting. So a couple of things. One is that when you talk about adversity, I've always my whole life believed that adversity is really a springboard to success. It's about lessons learned. So in my house, playing sports, not just playing sports, but playing competitive sports is mandatory. And the reason it's mandatory is not just because I'm a big sportsman. It's because I believe that sports teaches you so much about life. And one of the biggest things you learn from sports is adversity. Think about it. It's adversity playing against an opponent, competing against your own teammate for a starting position, losing a game and having to go back, into the gym and working harder and getting the reps in and putting in the work. It's really all about adversity. And I think that when people understand that they're able to get through adversity, when they do face something like this, then they are able to make it because they go back in their head to kind of where they were before, right? And they remember the experience when they were down by 4 points. Sorry, guys, hold on for a second.
Oh, good.
My phone is, give me 1 second, sorry.
No worries.
I got this stupid iPhone, and I'm not an iPhone person, and so the Siri thing keeps going off on me.
Let me turn know what you mean.
Yeah.
Turn the phone off. Actually, it's the weird thing. I don't even know how to.
I don't have Siri on my phone because I'm like I hate when that happens.
Oh, it always pops up.
Turn it off. I don't really use that phone. That's my work phone. I don't really use it. So my other phones are Android. I'm an Android guy actually, but. Anyway, that's irrelevant. So what I want to say is that what people have to understand is that once you're able to overcome adversity, then when you face adversity in the future, your body has a natural ability to recall what it took for you to overcome previous adversity. And that's why adversity is so important for kids, I think. Kids need to face adversity early. Growing up where everything is done for you and everything is smooth and picture perfect, that doesn't help a kid down the road. It just doesn't.
Yeah, and you nailed it because I know we talk about this all the time. I think, as you can see, there's so many resources, so many great things that are coming up in technology and in our lifetime, and we got to say it's helped a lot of people. But I've also got to say at the same time, we've also developed a very, very slower pace, lazier mentality type of individuals, especially in the youth, or very privileged, where they feel like I deserve this, I need this, why don't I have this? And one of the biggest things that I see is the fact of, you don't see as many kids wanting to go out there and compete. You don't see there as many kids wanting to get themselves involved in certain stuff. You don't see that often the way it was before. And I'm not saying that, there are exceptions. Of course there are. There's some great kids that are excelling, but I think there's a big shift where you're seeing the direction of the mentality that a lot of the youth is carrying on with them. And I think it has to do too with there's just way too much out there, easy to get, instant gratification, fast, where it's just like, hold up, when are you going to work for it? When are you going to work for it? And I just want to get your thoughts. What are some of the things that you would recommend for a household, for a parent who has kids? What are some of the disciplines? What are some of the actions that they should take with their child right away in order to instill that level of mentality for them to be able to grow and take that with them when they're older?
I grew up in a very blue-collar household. I didn't have a dad. My mother was my mother and my father. I have a twin brother, so it was the three of us, really, back in the 70s, Black family. It was tough. I watched my mother work 3 jobs. And we may not have had a lot in the way of material wealth, but we had a lot in the way of love and guidance, and just teachings, just good old-fashioned, work ethic, stay right, stay clean, do what you're supposed to do, be obedient. And we didn't live in a strict household, by the way. It wasn't like, my mother was the strictest, but we had an understanding. We were young, she was young. We had an understanding. In order for us to make it out of this situation, we got to do our best. And I say that because given where I am now, and I've been very blessed to have been afforded the best in education. My mother sacrificed for us to go to the best schools. I've had other people help me along the way, mentors. And here I am. I've had, a decent amount of success in my life, but I would not do it any differently, because as my grandfather would say, coming up the other side of the mountain was an extremely important journey for me. And it formulated who I am today. And when you talk about things being instant gratification, everything is convenient, right at your feet, that wasn't the way I grew up. I grew up with an organic fire in my belly, a drive to be, I tell my kids, when I was a kid, I wanted to be the best at anything. If I was playing trumpet, I wanted to be the best trumpet player. If I was, the class, the line leader, walking down the hall, we used to have to want to be a line leader. I wanted to walk the tightest. I mean, everything I did, I wanted excellence. And a lot of that came from the struggle that I saw in my family and the dreams that I had to make it, to quote unquote, make it. And I think now with kids, I think that, listen, I know times change, and I know that, and I'm okay with that. Evolution is beautiful, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that parents, and I'm a parent, I think that parents have to remember that there are some things that are timeless, and that making your kids earn things and making them struggle a little bit and strive, these are things that are irreplaceable in their lives as far as life skills. And I tell my kids all the time, I'm teaching, you got to make up your bed. You're now old enough to start taking out the garbage, to help shovel snow, not because I don't want to do it. I'm fine doing it. I love being active, by the way. These are all things that I would never complain about. But I want you to start doing it, because when you leave the house and become a young man and you're in college, you have to take care of yourself. Mm. I mean, there is a degree of being sheltered in college, of course, right? But you have to know how to comport yourself by yourself with mom and dad not there. And I think that parents are doing injustice to their kids when they want to overdo for the kids, right? You got to let your kids fail sometimes. Get your kids off electronics. I mean, the video games and electronics are really going to wipe out a significant portion of this generation, because The video games are so, and I do research into this all the time, read research. The video games are so super stimulatory that anything else does not compare as far as being exciting, because in their brain, the reward pleasure pathway is so stimulating. It's like cocaine, like drugs. It's so, and they've done studies. These video games, and the manufacturers know this, by the way, these video games are like digital heroin. And these kids are so addicted to it that if you say, hey, let's go outside, let's go play a sport, let's go to a museum, what? That's the worst thing in their life. Parents have got to get their kids off of these games, not completely, but they need to really structure how much time they're on these games.
Yeah, I mean, you see nowadays these kids spending all these like in-app purchase features too, right? And these kids are spending like $8,000, $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 on like a Sonic game that's only meant for like a 4-year-old. And you mentioned that these developers, these game developers know it. Like they know going into it that this Sonic the Hedgehog game, like you and I are not playing that. You know, I'm not fucking around on my iPhone like, okay, I can't wait to collect all these coins. You know what I mean? And spend all this real money. But a 4-year-old doesn't understand that. You know, they don't equate the fact that like the money that they're spending in the video game is or can be real money, right? They just think that like they're coins and everything. I want to ask you about a point that you made at the beginning of your statement, and that was that because you and your mom were so young, like you guys were in it together, right? And that kind of changed how you looked at being resilient and overcoming adversity. And I never really thought about it like that because just like you, I came from a very blue-collar home in upstate New York, single-parent mom, working a ton of jobs. But the only difference, and I want to ask you, does your twin brother feel the same way? Because I have a 9-year-old, or I have a sister who's 9 years younger than me, excuse me. And even though I think that she's resilient and she has her own way of dealing with adversity, I don't think that she is as prepared to deal with a lot of the chaos as I was growing up when my mom was 23, 24 when I was born, you know, and 32 when my sister was born. So even though we were still like under or right at the poverty line, different type of struggle, right? Than like when you're putting your foot through the floorboard of the car, you know, at 4 years old. So I want to get your take. Like, does your twin brother feel the same way? And do you think, like, what would you think would be the difference between the thought process that I have, which is relentless, kind of like what you have, and where my sister's at, where it's like some things are okay to accept mediocrity and some things like she wants to strive to be the best at?
This is a great question. First of all, you used my word for 2021, relentless. On my Instagram, I said, this year, my word is relentless.
Boom.
I'm typically that anyway, but this year I'm really going to be relentless in 2021. I just said, it's so ironic. I called my brother today. He lives in LA. And I said to him, I said, I just want you to know how happy I am to have you as a brother, because not only do I love you so much, but you're really the only person in the world who really can understand and see things the same way I see things, because you experienced it right. He's my twin. You experienced it right along with me. And so he and I have this ability to have purely nonverbal communication and be on the same page and look at a situation, be on the same page, because we understand the struggle. And he's raising his family and I'm raising my family. And we went through struggles, but obviously both of us are successful compared to what our mother was, you know? Mm-hmm. And so there is this concern that we have, and I'm serious about this, where I don't want my kids not to be able to relate to what it means to put the work in, right? I mean, because, you know, I have a good life, thanks, you know, very blessed. I have a good life, and my kids by default are going to have a good life, but I have to be very vigilant to make sure that I don't overdo it. I was watching this crazy show on Netflix. It's called Bling Empire, where these really wealthy Asian,
I think I saw a trailer of it yesterday, actually.
It was, you know, I couldn't stop watching it. It's one of those train wrecks you can't stop watching. But I was just saying to myself, how awful it must be to be one of these young adults, they're young adults, to be one of these young adults and not be able to relate to some of the most basic things. Like, I don't care how much money I have. I never want my kid not to be able to relate, right? I mean, I think a big problem we have now in the country is people are not relating to each other, right? People are not able to look beyond their own station in life and their own context and still relate to someone else. I mean, you and I grew up similar. Mom struggled, near the poverty line, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't be able to relate to someone who grew up as a son of a millionaire, right? You got to still be able to relate. It doesn't mean that, that you understand everything they're going through, but you have to be able to relate to it. And I think that it's the relatability factor that I think people get when they go through struggle. I really do. And I think it informs them.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you. I think it is a huge issue that we have here in America. We see it every day in Miami, right? Like I work on South Beach. I still train a couple of people in person, and they're unbelievable, like mind-blowingly wealthy. And some of the things that I hear them talk about, I'm just like, about people from more blue-collar, quote-unquote, flyover states, and if you're not, within 200 miles of a body of water, like you don't, you pretty much shouldn't even be voting. I'm like, you have no fucking clue. Like, you think that these people are so stupid just because you know how to type some numbers and letters into an Excel spreadsheet. I'm like, what if the internet was gone tomorrow? Could you change your oil? Could you start a fire? Could you pitch a tent?
That's right.
Could you hunt for your own food? Because all of the people I grew up with, even the tiniest of girls, can go out there and kill a deer. So what's real intelligence? Like, they know what poison ivy looks like, so if they ever get caught in the woods, they're not going to die. They know not to eat these poison, but like, you'd be passed out on the ground. No one would find you. So what is intelligence, right? And what does that really mean for the individual that has to go through their life experiences? It baffles me sometimes.
My grandfather used to have a great saying, by the way. My grandfather never went past 6th grade, right?
Incredible.
So, and he would say, you get these people who went to great schools, right? Ivy League schools and all this fancy stuff and all these degrees, and they did stupid stuff. And he would say, he ain't nothing but an educated fool. because there is something about also having, we call it, common sense, street sense. There's, that's irreplaceable. Like you said, if all these systems broke down, could you really take care of yourself? Do you know how to? And that's why I tell my kids, I am making you do things now, not because I'm tired or lazy, because I'm anything but that, because it's important for your personal development to be able to do these things, right? And I think that, when you're come from where I come from, you want your kids not to have the difficulties that you had. I'll never forget, one of my favorite quotes from Mike Tyson was when he would say, I'm taking the blows so my kids don't have to take them, right? There's something really deep about that, right? And while that is good, but your kids still need to take a couple blows, right? Because then you get these kids who are 23, 25, they're floating around, no direction, they can't do for themselves. If they face a little adversity, they're melting. They're running to a psychiatrist's office for therapy.
They need safe spaces. They need safe spaces
that.
at universities.
I want to talk to you about that. Yep.
What do you need a safe space for at a university? Like, the whole campus is a safe space. You have and now, no real problems.
And now every little thing is just like, every little issue is like, oh my God, we got to talk up. Some of these schools that I'm seeing now is like, oh, we got to share the feelings right now and then. Like, we need to stop everything. And it's just like, I get it. We need to talk about certain things, and hey, it's okay to feel it. There's no problem with that. But I think when you hyper focus on now every little moment, every little thing, it's about, oh my God, oh, it's okay. The trigger, it's just like, guys, it's reality. Shit happens. Suck it up. You want to know what real shit is? Let's go take you over here and let's go take a look. And that, I think, is one of the biggest problems, is that they've made it to that point where now it's just like, it's like with even the kids, like, no, we want the kids sharing everything that they feel. Guys, they're kids. Sometimes they don't even know what they're feeling. It's like, they don't even get it. They don't even know what feeling is, and they're kids. And that's why if you keep pushing on that message, or you keep pushing and putting in that in their head, they're going to just, they're kids. They're going to just adapt to it. They're going to, you know, believe in that. And then they think that that's what their life is all about. And every little thing is, whoa, oh, you know, instead of saying like, hey guys, you know, it's okay to feel like this. It's okay. Things are going to happen in life. You're going to struggle and there's nothing wrong with that. But now you got to get it back up and you got to start pushing forward again. And that's how we got to talk to them. Acknowledge what they're feeling, but let them know, hey, this is okay. You took a hit. You got a hit. Get your ass up and let's keep moving. And I'll be here to help you, but you got to keep moving. It's not going to be all fun, sunshine and rainbows.
I could not agree with you anymore. I totally am open, and I realize that times are different when I grew up. When I grew up, it was rough. Like, you know, it was like, you know, it wasn't, you didn't even think about like complaining or stuff. You just dealt with it, right? No one had to tell you to do that. Right? So I understand, and counselors talking about being more open, better communication. I'm all for that. Let me just be clear. I'm all for that. However, I do believe that there are situations where, excuse the expression, you just got to suck it up, buttercup. Like this is what it is. And you got to deal with it. And we're not going to spend 90 minutes, you know, dissecting. This is it. Like, you got to figure it out and deal with it and move on. And then we got to move on. And so I agree with you. I think that, you know, for younger people now, in our desire to move into this kind of broader, community of communication, that to some degree we may have overcorrected. Right. You know, and I say to my kids all the time, I know they're tired of this, but you know what? My job as a parent is to guide my kids. And even if they don't agree or understand what I'm doing, that's what parenting is, right? I mean, I say in my house, there are certain things that are negotiable. What color you want your walls, the music you listen to, who your friends are, that stuff, that's your stuff. But there's certain things that I, as a parent, have to guide you through, and because I know better than you, and this is not a democratic process. Certainly, there's not a democratic process. This is how it's going to be. I'm not a rigid guy, but by the same token, I want my kids to understand some basic fundamentals of life. And, you know, I just think, like last night, for example, we were watching, you know, MLK Day, we're watching Eyes on the Prize. It's a very tough, it's one of the best documentaries for people to understand the history of race in America. And it's tough to watch, by the way. People are getting beat, spit on, lynched. But I want them to see that because I want them to have some relative context to what they're seeing now. And so they understand kind of what the evolution was. And even though it's tough for them to watch that, they got to watch it. You got to see this. This is not, we're not in a dream. This is reality, right? And I want you to know the kind of beatings that people took so you guys could have opportunities, and therefore you'll be respectful when you hear an older person who doesn't speak the greatest English, by the way, and you won't laugh at that person. You realize that that person actually took beatings decades ago so you can speak better English than him or her.
I love that you said that because it reminds me of when my especially my grandparents would tell me stories when they came out of Cuba and the struggles they had to face. And they would literally say, hey, I want you to sit here and listen to this story because you have to listen to this. And I remember they would literally sit to me. My grandpa would always sit to me. He's like, hey, I need you to listen to this. It wasn't even like, hey, I want you or like, can you? It was like, hey, I need you to listen to this. Like, you know, understand, like, you know, we had to do this. We had to go through this. Look at this. And they would, I remember we'd sometimes even, I remember he put this documentary movie showing the history of Cuba, what everybody losing all their stuff and all this. And it was crazy because it just makes you realize, like, holy shit, like that's some real problems. You know what I mean? Like leaving your country with nothing, with only your family, one bag each person, and that is it. No
not
going back.
Not speaking English well.
Not speaking English at all.
Period. Going on the Mariel boats, like those were tough.
That's what I'm saying. And I think, I don't want to, you know, beat the point, but I think that is why I respect a degree of adversity in one's life, because your grandfather, because of his experience with his family, that formed who he was. It made him tough. It made him resilient. When things were down, he didn't fold. You know, he wasn't on the ground, you know, decompensating, because he knows, hey, listen, I got this. Mm-hmm. I've dealt with this before. I came here with nothing. You know, yeah, I may lose some money here, but it's not going to crush me, right? Because I had nothing. My grandfather went from the South to the North, I think he said he had like maybe $6 in his pocket. Wow. and a box of sandwiches. That's it. So I think that, where we are now, I think that it is wise of us meaning older people, to really make sure that kids have texture in life. They got to feel the roughness sometimes. It can't be all smooth. It can't be all, I'm not saying I put them in the middle of gang violence, but you can't gloss over everything.
Yeah.
I think in the long run, it's just not helpful to them.
That's right. Yeah.
As becoming well-developed adults.
Well, and I think too is that a difference of viewpoint that we have nowadays in terms of how easy it is to quote unquote make it, right, become successful compared to what our parents, our grandparents had. Like becoming a millionaire in 1930 was a whole lot different than becoming a millionaire now. Yep. And when I would always talk to my grandparents or to even talk to my mom, it was always like, listen, as you said, I want to make your life better. I want to make my children's life better than my life. It was never, I want to become a millionaire. It was never, I need to have 5 companies. It was, as long as your life is better than my life, I can die happy. My grandmother said the same thing. My grandfather said the same thing. And I think nowadays people lose sight of the fact of just how hard it is to actually continue with, for lack of a better term, generational wealth. And that could be your values, your morals, money, whatever it may be, property. People lose sight of that, right? They're so focused on I have to have the flashiest shit. I need to, have the biggest house, that they lose sight of the fact that as long as your kids are doing better, didn't you do your job as a human being? You passed along your genes, and you did so to potentially hopefully make your community and the world around you a little better place.
This is why this happens. And I've thought about this at great lengths. This happens because we are so self-absorbed and so consumed with me, with where we are, with what we have, that we don't allow our minds to be extracted from a state of consumption to a state of transference. By that I mean is we want to see and take and get everything we can get a hold of, but we don't sit back and say, do I really need all of this? Or could I just take some of it and maybe hand some off for future generations, right? And people don't accept that no matter how rich you are, how famous you are, that we all transition out of this world. And, you can name the richest people that have lived. Guess what? They went into the ground and transitioned just like a guy who had no money whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And when you think about the commonality that we all have, which is that life on earth, at least, is finite. If you really have that perspective, it humbles you. And it makes you realize we are only temporary custodians of the earth. We're temporary custodians. There are generations before us. There are generations after us. How dare us think that this is all about me and the now? I'm the greatest thing ever. I'm the baddest thing. No, it's not like that, right? Yeah, have fun. I'm not saying don't have fun. I'm not saying don't live life to the fullest, but you have to be humble to realize that we're also trying to set it up so that people behind us have a better world than we have, right? I mean, when you think about it, we all stand on the shoulders of those before us. Can you imagine the life there was when there was no phones, no cars? Yep. I mean, think about what that life must have been like. We didn't live in that era. Huh?
The patience level too.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. We didn't live in that. We didn't live in that era. We were lucky enough where, and by the way, when I'm older than you guys, but most of my life, there were no computers, right? Now, a kid can't imagine living life without a computer and a cell phone. And once again, all great things. But what I'm trying to say is that people have to understand you can't overconsume. You can't be so selfish. You talk about things like climate, change. Listen, I want the world to be around forever, if possible. So whatever little I can do, how big of a sacrifice is it to me to be a little more conscious of, what I do and how I use things? I mean, is it really that much? It's not a political thing for me, by the way. It has nothing to do with politics. To me, it has to do with me being a humble person who realizes that even if you live to 100, life is always still too short. Think about it. Mm-hmm. When you compare it to our timeline. So, I hope more people adopt that. They adopt that philosophy, a selfless philosophy, so others behind us, can have better lives.
So Ian, I gotta ask you, what is your take on the way you see things going forward in life? Obviously it's been an interesting year for everybody. And even before that, seeing how, generations have shifted. What is your take on where do you see things going? And how do you think that, collectively, because obviously this is not something one person, but it can start with one person and make that chain reaction break into their family and create, generations of future kids becoming and seeing what life is really all about. What do you think it's going to really take? Or what do you think is the breaking factor for people to realize, like, okay, we can't continue on like this anymore?
Yeah, well, I think, let me use this as a jump off point. I never imagined that I would see in my lifetime fellow Americans taking over our capital with guns. I just never,
it's absurd.
Like that stuff, right? That stuff I always saw like in other countries and third world countries like that. I never, for the life of me, now I know we argue, we have disagreements. I get that. That's fine. I'm not against disagreements, by the way. I think that if everyone thought the same way, that it'd be too homogenous and life would be boring. So I like the fact that we have a difference of opinions and that we're very convicted. That's no problem that whatsoever. But I think that when you get to a point that it becomes destructive to the fabric of what holds us together, right? Like, we're all different, but there's a fabric, a mesh that holds all of us together like this. And we're all together on this thing. Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down, you're sideways, but we're all still kind of, when you start eating away at the fabric of that becomes problematic, not just to individuals, but to the concept and the notion that we all, I think, were taught as kids to believe in, that we're a democracy and there's fairness and, this is our country, right? It's our country. It's no more your country than mine and vice versa. And I think that, the way we're going to have to go forward is we're going to have to agree that we're never going to agree on everything, but we're also going to have to agree that there is a tenet that must be held by everyone, which is that the concept of this democracy, the very notion of this democracy, is bigger than any individual. It's bigger than your philosophy, your ideology. It's bigger than Democrat, bigger than Republic. It's bigger. And you always have to say to yourself, hey, listen, at the end of the day, we live in a great country. And I travel the world, guys. And I love traveling, by the way, because it teaches me I love the world.
Oh, yeah.
But it teaches me a lot about our country, too, when I travel away. When I'm in China and Germany and London and Paris, it teaches me about our country. And it also teaches me why I love our country, why I love the country, and why I believe in it. Even though, there are a lot of people who are very upset right now and don't believe in the country. I still believe in the country, right? I believe that we can still have really vast differences, but still understand that we put country first, always. Because think about it, guys, if you don't put country first, you're now in civil war, right? And who wins in that? Who wins in that? I mean, so it's very sad. I was very sad. I wasn't surprised. I was very sad that many people, many to blame, by the way, not just, just the extremists. It's many people, by the way. Media's to blame. A lot of people, Democrats and Republicans, when you're sitting there and you're fighting over giving people money who are struggling, right? It's not just a Republican issue. The Democrats are fighting too. Like, be adults, sit down and figure out how to help this country. People are struggling. They're losing their houses. They're getting evicted. They can't eat. You see lines down in Florida at food banks. I mean, these aren't homeless people. These are people in like driving Acuras and BMWs trying to get, so where do we go? I know it's a long answer. Where we go, I think, is that we all have to take a deep breath, settle down, accept that people have different views and opinions, but we can never let anything eat at the fabric. You got to respect the fabric.
Where do you think that it went wrong for us all here? Like in terms of being able to have these difficult conversations, like you mentioned before about people being super selfish. Do you think that it's us as individual Americans saying like, no, our emotional, well-being or our perceived emotional well-being is more important than yours, therefore our ideas are more important than yours? Or like, what do you think really started this catalyst of such divisiveness?
Listen, no country is perfect, and our union is not perfect. And we've had problems since the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And we're going to continue to have problems. It's okay to have problems. This is not a utopia. That doesn't exist. But I think that you can't go back and relitigate the past. And I think a lot of people, for example, I'm trying not to get political, but I'm just trying to be honest with you guys, because I don't think one side is right and one side is wrong. Let me make that very clear. I think there's culpability everywhere. But when someone says to me, make America great again, what does that mean? America's great. To me, based on what I saw, how people behave, make America great again means you want to go back to where things were imbalanced and unfair and unequal, where there was dominance. That's not, to some people, that's when America was at its greatest. To me, America has always been at its greatest when it accepts immigrants. We are a country of immigrants. We are, all of us, except the Native Americans. We're a country of immigrants. And the binding principle when I was a kid, the melting pot, the beauty of the melting pot is that what binds us is that we have a history of struggle from our own homeland. You have a history of struggle from Cuba, right? My ancestors have a history of struggle, but here we are now in this land that we share together with the hope that we can have fun, we can enjoy each other, our kids can have a great life because we have such a better life than other countries, right? And I think that where the division happens is that some people, not everybody, some people want to return the country to an era when, to be very honest with them, to be point blank, to an era that was a dark stain in the country. The Civil War was not great. The Civil War killed lots of people. It hurt lots of people. It threatened the entire Union. And so I think people, have to understand, how do you constructively act on your disagreements? Mm-hmm. This is not constructive right now. This is not constructive. Just not.
I think we can definitely agree that, on both extreme sides, we've seen tension arise. We've seen a lot of backlash. We've seen a lot of just honing in on, no, we're right, instead of just, agreeing to disagree and coming with a conclusion and being able to fix things at the end of the day. And I think it goes back to just like, even ourselves, we've done it before, where we react off our emotions. And I think the biggest problem is there's so many emotional people right now, which, guys, it's okay to feel and be emotional. What's not okay is when you let your emotions dictate the decisions in your life, and they corrupt your values. And I think that there's just so much of that going on both sides, that you're seeing a disconnect with people's values and what they truly stand for, and letting their emotions take over and dictate the decisions they make moving forward in their life. And I think that's what we've seen throughout this year with different situations, different causes, a lot of that going on, causing a lot of those emotions to spill out, then just reacting in the wrong ways with those emotions and saying, hey, how can we just take these emotions, learn from them, let me calm for a sec, and let me react with my values, still standing for what you believe, and you can still disagree, but in a value-driven way, where this is where I'm coming from in my most sincere and deepest well-being.
Yes, that's beautiful, by the way, and I agree 100%. And I feel like I've had to do it for myself personally. like sometimes I'll be in a situation, and one of the greatest things that that I've evolved into is the ability to do what you said, which is take a step back, take a breather before I say or do something when I'm upset that's going to have really lasting consequences. And it was a weakness of mine, by the way. And now I'm so good because now I'm like, okay, Ian, easy. And I would say 8 out of 10 times I win, which is good. Okay. The easy Ian comes out, but you're right. And I think that this is a time that we all have to do that, by the way. And, like you said, like for example, I believe, I don't know anyone who went to the Capitol, but I believe that there are people who did that, who think about it now and wish they hadn't done that.
Oh, a ton. A ton.
Yeah, I think that and by the way, there's nothing wrong with the protest, by the way. The protest was fine. That's the beauty of America. This is not a dictatorship. You can protest. You don't like something, get out there, yell, scream, whatever you want, nonviolent, have at it. It's when you start attacking the sacred fabric of our union, our democracy, that's the problem I have. And I believe that, as you guys know, kind of when stuff starts going and the heat of it all, that people made decisions they probably wouldn't have. Not all of them, but I think a lot of them probably would say, you know what? We should just stood out there and yelled and screamed and called them names, but we probably shouldn't have been in there, going through people's offices into the chamber of the Senate.
Stealing laptops, yeah.
I mean, that's just it's so classless. It's like, listen, I've had problems with a lot of things that have happened in the last 4 years, but I would never think to do something like that. It just wouldn't even register to me. Like, I may post something on Instagram or Facebook, right? Or, talk to my friends about it. It would never come to my mind.
Let's go destroy some property. Yeah.
And I think that's, definitely one of the biggest things that we've seen that a lot, happen. It's like, hey, let's go tackle this, or let's go destroy that, or let's go break this. And it's just like, guys.
Well, and I think too, a lot of people are, frustrated. A lot of people are bored. A lot of people don't have anything to do. So they go out. And then when you're in these big crowds, you get into, you might be around the wrong people and get into that mob mentality. And then it's a split decision.
And let me be clear. Let me be very fair here. BLM, a lot of those protests were very peaceful, but there were also people who used those protests
to fuck shit up.
To loot and vandalize. I don't approve of that whatsoever. Even though you have faced decades of inequality and mistreatment, I don't believe that's the answer. I understand you're tired and blah, 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 but that's not the answer. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. It's both sides. It's not just one group. It's any group that believes that is the answer, means that you don't believe in our system. Our system is a democratic system. It's not perfect, but if you don't like it, go vote. Go do your thing. Look what they did in Georgia. Okay, they flipped Georgia because people should actually be excited what happened in Georgia. Whether you're Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. They flipped Georgia because people who had grievances
went out and
voted. That's actually the American way, right? Isn't that?
It's perfect.
The American, right? So you should be happy that happened. Now, if you're the losing side, then you got to say, okay, hey guys, we got to
we got to do something better. Yeah.
We got to review our strategy here. What happened? Let's sit down and analyze it. Don't sit there and call things illegal and stealing and then yelling and screaming at the election officials who, by the way, are in your party, who actually want you to win. Like, none of that. The Georgia situation, guys, to be honest with you, is the most inane, irrational thing to me possible. You say that the presidency was stolen, but all the other officials that were elected were Republicans. So you think that they just rigged it?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time. I really hope, and I think by people like you and people like us having conversations like this, and getting them out onto platforms such as podcasts or, social media, whatever, hopefully we can at least, put a little bit of that flame into people's minds to think like, we disagree all the time. He'll tell you, I yell at him every day, every day. But at the end of that argument, we walk out of the door in the studio and we go right back to loving each other, because
Absolutely.
it's a
Absolutely.
just like anger is a moment in time, so is, happiness, so is sadness, and it goes away. It goes away, and there'll be another moment, right? So try to make that next moment better than the one that you just had.
I have a saying I learned as a kid. One of my teachers told me, I wish I remember which teacher it was. She said, the more time you spend angry is the less time you have to be happy. Wow.
Damn.
Yep.
Wow, right?
Powerful.
I want to be happy as much as possible. My life is short. I want to be happy as much. I have finite days here. I want to be as happy as I can. The more time you spend angry, the less time you're happy. So I'm a kind of guy, when you and I get into a disagreement, I had a disagreement with my executive producer the other day. She's yelling and screaming at me. Yelling and screaming at me. And I made a decision that, you know what? I'm going to stay calm. Because if I start yelling and screaming, we're going to get nothing accomplished. Once we finished that conversation, I moved on. It was over. Like, okay, let's go to work. Let's I'm just not a guy who kind of holds things. I just doesn't, I always say that your rage, your anger, and your vindictiveness can actually become a prison, the bars of your prison, right? Think about it, because you're locked in now by these emotions, and now you're imprisoned by them. I don't want to be imprisoned by that stuff, right? And so I always try, I'm not always perfect, but I'm pretty good now. I always try to say, hey, listen, guys, we disagreed, we had a problem, let's move on. And I think that's what we got to do in the country. We got to say, listen, guys, everyone has their points. Everyone feels emotional about it, right? Everyone does. And that's fine. Now let's figure out how we do this thing together. Let's not now, we're going to get you back because of what you did. Then you're going to get us back. That's not going to work.
No, it's going to get worse.
Yeah, that seesaw,
it's going to get way worse.
No.
It's going to get worse.
That pendulum going back and forth, it just keeps going until boom.
Yeah.
Guys, I turned your podcast into politics. Were we supposed to
Hey,
talk about
it's all good. We love to talk about anything, but it's all intertwined in your life, and it's important that we all have these conversations, right? Because it's not just up to political pundits to have discussions about things that affect us personally.
And at the end of the day, I think this still has correlation of the deep-rooted thing, which is health. If you want to live a healthier life, if you want to be a more positive individual, I think it starts with, let's all be able to sit down and have conversations, healthy conversations. Let's all be able to, get together and be able to agree to disagree. That's healthy. That's and then going back, driving the message of let's create harder working individual out there who want to be able to obtain the things they want by putting in that work and not just feeling like they deserve something, and giving a hand to them, because that's not healthy. So, we still appreciate you coming on here, because this is all topics of health regardless. Because at the end of the day, if people don't live this kind of life or don't direct this message or approach on their life, they're not living a healthy lifestyle.
Can I tell you something real fast what I think is important for one's health? Beyond, I've written tons of diet books and fitness books. You guys know that stuff. I think that people need to be more passionate. Mm-hmm. I think that one of the problems, that reason why people are unhealthy, is that they don't have a passion in life, and a positive passion in life, right? And when you are passionate about something and you're driven to pursue that passion and accomplish something, that is very important for your state of well-being in your mind. Very important. And this is where it all starts. It starts above the neck, between the ears. When you can get your mind in the right place, everything else follows from that. Okay? And I think that I encourage people to take up a hobby, find what your true passion is, and pursue it. Without abandon, pursue it. Me, for example, I have several passions, but writing is wonderful to me. And I love to write. It's meditative. It allows me to be creative. It allows me to explore worlds that I have never been to, but I can create them in my mind. And it makes me a calmer person. It makes me, and also I wake up every morning excited, and I'm just, creative. I write my health books, and those are fun. But writing my novels and mysteries, that to me, I think, has really had a great impact on my health, because it's been a nice stabilizer for me. When stuff is stressed, and when stuff is going on, when I get into my computer and I'm locked into my story, my heart rate goes down, my blood pressure is down. I just feel so much better.
I love that. Before we wrap things up, how can people reach out to you and contact you?
Yeah, please go to my Instagram like you did. You got me on Instagram. It's at Dr. Ian Smith. Spell the doctor out, I-A-N Smith.
Right.
I answer DMs. And my new book is called The Unspoken. So if you like thrillers and mysteries, please check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's on Amazon.com. And my Twitter is Dr. Ian Smith.
Awesome. Well, we had an amazing time having this conversation with you. And I'm already looking forward to the next time we're going to bring you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. Make sure you guys all check out Dr. Ian Smith and his new book. You guys can get it on Amazon. What's it called one more time for everybody?
The Unspoken. And then the diet book is called Fast Burn.
Fast Burn. All right, you guys heard it. Grab it on Amazon today. All right, thanks, Ian. We really appreciate
the love, brother.
Until next time, everybody.